Hello, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
I am very excited about this conversation.
Me too.
It was Elise who connected us, who has been on the podcast and I've known for years. And it was the old leadership archetypes. I think
That's
that was
right.
the key word that she threw in. I was like, ooh,
Oh, that makes me laugh.
yeah.
That's great. Oh.
And our exploration call could have been a podcast already. So now we're finally ready to share it with the audience.
That's right. That's right. I'm so curious what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, yes. Um, And before we are getting there, always kick it off with the same question. When did you start calling yourself a facilitator? And actually, do you?
Yeah, yeah. I love that question. And I was thinking about it. And probably 10, 12 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years. And then as I started to get back into work and into thinking about what might be, I started looking at what's out there. And I discovered the word facilitator, and I was like, oh, that's what I do. I didn't know that
Mm,
was a thing. And so I kind of started using that word in some senses then, as I was exploring kind of the industry of organization psychology, leadership psychology, all the things. Um, and it's interesting as I was thinking about it, I was realizing I don't use it so much as a noun, as a verb,
mm,
right? So I come with a facilitative approach to any work that I do, but I don't necessarily label myself as a facilitator, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. And I think that most of my podcast guests,
Yeah,
that's
I
how
would
they
agree.
identify that, yeah, maybe not a capital F facilitator,
Yeah, yeah.
people who facilitate as part of their work.
And part of it, I think, is that that's not a role that people go out and search to pay for,
Mm,
right? As we're trying to market ourselves and what we do, we have to focus on a different aspect of our identity, and that's the approach that we're bringing
yeah,
in.
yeah, that's true. And I just recently spoke to a colleague that very often a group doesn't notice the value of
Exactly.
facilitation because it remains almost invisible. Or
Yeah.
magically everything went perfectly. We could have saved the bucks to to hire that person who didn't speak.
Right.
And we only realized that how important facilitation is if it doesn't
Right.
go well.
Right. Or people think the leader thinks that's something I'm supposed to be able to do. I need to be able to run a meeting well or do the strategic plan or something like that, right? That's not a separate skill set or value of that objective voice. Yeah.
And then do you think that this is a skill that leaders actually aspire to have? I have somehow, and I'm thinking out loud here, I haven't made up the thought totally yet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if facilitation as a skill as a leadership skill would be something that might be more on the softer side.
For sure. For
So
sure.
how much prejudice or stereotype is there?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really fair. And as I think about leaders who are feeling responsible to run the meeting, they're not always thinking of it from the skill sets that we bring as facilitators. They're
Hmm.
thinking of it as how is the meeting being led, or are we using time really well? And did we get to our deliverable? And did we do this, that, and the next thing? Um, and it feels like a luxury expense more than
Mm,
a business critical. This is how we do our best work.
yeah,
Um, Role or position. Yeah.
yeah.
Which I think is one of the challenges we have as facilitators, right? Is to close that gap between, no, this isn't luxury. This
Hmm.
is how we do work, right? This is how the business moves forward.
Yeah. Especially if we look at facilitation as something that goes beyond the agenda and the timekeeping,
Yes.
but
Yes.
how can we actually um, access all the knowledge that's in the room?
Exactly.
How can
Exactly.
we wake up all the people in the meeting who are not speaking to
Yes.
participate so actually that everyone benefits?
Yes.
And then hierarchy plays a big role. So
Hmm.
if status and respect is measured by who speaks the most, then maybe this person doesn't want to facilitate and to hear from others.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Which is an interesting dynamic, right? Sometimes you have the leader who is like, I need my point to be coming across. And sometimes you have the one who's sitting back and being like, I'm trying to get other people to talk, and they almost won't talk enough, right? In those roles. One of the things I talk about when I say that I'm coming in to facilitate is that I'm helping the team or the group have the conversation they wish they could be having.
Mm,
Like everyone's having side conversations on the way to the car or through text after or what's happening. What happens if we're actually able to bring that in to the conference room
mm,
and to have those conversations in real time?
yeah. What do you think? I want to park that question. So I
Okay.
park the question, what do you think the real obstacles to that are? And first would like to ask, since you're teaching leadership at
Hmm.
university,
Hmm.
so how, just to be aligned also with the audience, when we use the word leader
Okay.
or leadership, what are we talking about?
Hmm. I love it. I love it. My mind is going like in five different directions, but I'm going to stay with you here. When we use the word leadership, I am frequently thinking of I am frequently thinking of the role of who is guiding the direction,
Hmm.
which isn't fair. We know, right? A lot of leadership happens uh, not dependent on the role. It's not
Hmm.
about who's in the role. It's about like where things go. Um, but the people that I am contracting with are frequently the people who are in that role,
Okay.
and people who are trying to get better at
Hmm.
being in that role,
Yeah.
increase their skills.
Great. And I think that really helps because then it's not something, oh, we are all leaders.
Right,
Everyone can
right.
be a leader. No, we're talking about someone who is assigned to lead a group into a direction and who takes
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah. I think that's fair for this conversation. Yeah,
Okay, great. Um, I think that helps, right? So
yeah, yeah.
common ground. I parked the question. Um, so I love this. What is the conversation that you wish you
Yeah.
had? But you somehow don't. What do you think gets really in the way of these teams to have the conversation?
Think it's very team dependent, right? And very organization dependent. What the specific obstacle is, which is part of the fun of being a facilitator, is you never know what's going to happen, right?
Hmm.
And what you're stepping into, what you're trying to adapt with. Frequently, I think it is um, I think there's an aspect of people trying to drive the agenda and keep people on time and on task, and they've decided the task,
Hmm.
right? And or maybe a dominant speaker in the room who has a side thing that's coming and it just didn't it hasn't been heard properly or it hasn't been represented in the way. I think frequently it's about, okay, I'm going to unwind myself just a little bit as I'm thinking this through. One of the frameworks that I really like to use is GRPI. Are you familiar with this? It's the
Mm.
idea of goals, roles, process, interpersonal
Yeah.
dynamics, right?
Hmm.
And these are kind of the four pillars of teaming or working together. And I think one of the things that gets people so that they're not having the conversations that they want to be having is misalignment on goals. What are we
Mm.
even doing here in the first place? What is this meeting about? What are so in the microcosm, what is this hour supposed to be about? What's our goal? But also more broadly, what is our work? What are we actually moving towards or focusing on? And what are we paying attention to? What are the risks or what are the benefits or what are the people all come with their own perspective of what's most important,
Mm.
right? But then we haven't taken the time to align on what we as a group think is most important,
Hmm.
and to make sure that there's time for that in the conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so kind of backing up a step in that regard, I think is really helpful.
Mm. And then I wonder whether it's one of those where everyone assumes that the other one knows or
Mm,
assumes that they are aligned, but they are not.
hmm.
And then there's this, oh, why we don't need to talk about that because everyone knows.
Right, right.
Or we don't need to talk about that because I don't want to admit that I'm the only one who doesn't know.
Yes, all the assumptions we're making, right, on what other people are thinking or feeling or how it's coming for it. It's funny, like as you're talking about those examples, we assume that everyone's thinking the same thing, but then we also make assumptions of that person is, out in left field because why are they going that way? Why are they thinking different than everyone? We're making divergent assumptions at the same time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then the question is leadership bringing everyone on track, and then how
Hmm.
fast and how much space is given to maybe explore why someone is running in a different direction where they
Yeah.
might make sense. And then there's often not enough time for that.
Yes, yes, I think that that's fair. And I think that there's work to do before that meeting or that workshop or that
Mm,
retreat or whatever it is, right? Even just in agenda setting, one of my favorite ways to set an agenda is in the first 5 minutes. These are
mm,
the things I think are most important. Who else has things we need to add? And what order should we be going in,
mm.
right? Taking a few minutes to, as a group, determine what we need to be talking about in this time.
Yeah. What I like about that is it doesn't assume that people have prepared,
Hmm.
um, and it doesn't give power to the one person who has prepared,
Yeah.
but also allows others to chip in and to bring in topics that might be important.
Yeah, yeah. And they could have prepared their 5 minutes or their 10
Mm.
minutes, right?
Yeah,
And so we need to make sure we really are honoring that preparation. And there are also impromptu things that come up as a result of that,
yeah,
right? That we need to
yeah,
make time to talk about.
yeah. Yeah, and all of that is actually a big responsibility if then on top of that you also want to listen to what's going on and maybe contribute your own
Right,
idea.
right,
It
right,
makes, yeah.
right. And sometimes we have ideas that don't actually need to be shared in this moment, but they feel urgent to us, right? Because they're on the tip of our tongue and we need to get them out. And so how do we as a group determine where we're focusing our energy and time based on what we need to have accomplished at the end, versus what's a detour?
Mm, yeah. And I'm sure there is a name for this bias, this present time bias or something, that
Mm,
stuff that just has happened seems more important and more urgent than
right.
everything else.
What is that? Is
Um,
that recency? Recency
yeah,
bias?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Um, yeah, fascinating. And so we started off the conversation about with the kind of word of old leadership archetypes.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I would love for you to share with me and the audience um, what are these old leadership archetypes and what maybe can we learn from that or leave behind,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, my mind is going in two places.
especially as you're educating the next leaders.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, two places. So I want to tell you them both so that I remember to come back if the conversation allows. One is this idea of cosplaying as a
Mm,
certain type of leader, right? That we're kind of talking about here. And the other is what's changing in our environment and what's required of a leader
mm,
now
mhm,
versus a couple decades ago,
mhm,
right? And I think I want to start there, if that's okay. Um, we talk about changing. It's always changing,
mhm,
right? There's never a point where change stays static.
mhm,
It just doesn't happen. But the change that we are currently seeing leaders have to navigate now is exponentially different than
mhm,
it's been in the past. Much faster paced, much more complex, so many more things coming in. And there's never a now we're settling in to the new norm
mhm,
because the pace of change is so fast. So there isn't a lot of our old change models and how we lead through them are about getting people used to the difference, right?
mm. So
As
you have an
opposed,
endpoint, so to speak,
yes.
where you aspire to get to, and then you can rest.
Yes,
Mm,
yes. And it's about kind of catching up to that place, right?
mm,
Like how do my emotions catch up to that? And how do I learn the new way of being in this space,
mhm.
right? And oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you see me thinking. Thank
Yeah.
you. So what I hear in that is that so in the past there was a change that was predefined, a
Yeah,
new status quo,
yeah.
and we have to bring people along. And now it isn't defined, but the change is the process.
Yes, yes. And in the past, there were frequently changes that we made that we knew how to make. We
Mm,
recognize the situation that we're moving towards, and we know the steps to get there, right?
mhm,
We might call that like a technical kind of change, where it is we're following the path. We can find the instructions on Google,
mhm.
right? Or with
Yeah.
someone. And now with today's change, we're being called more and more into an adaptive, always on kind of change where we don't know the path forward. We don't
Hmm.
even necessarily know the end point. We
Hmm.
just know that we can't stay where we are,
Hmm.
right? And there are so many more factors coming in that are influencing the change and where we might go in the future.
Hmm.
Sometimes things that feel unpredictable, right?
Hmm.
Um, COVID-19 is a great example, right? Where that didn't feel predictable to a lot of people, a lot of leaders.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
Since you're saying COVID-19, I was wondering, so for me, this was a moment that was unique in a
Mhm.
sense that it was okay to admit that we don't know.
Yeah,
Globally, independent of anyone's status or position, nobody knew, and it was absolutely okay to say,
I feel like a
nobody
relief.
expected that. We don't know how to handle that. We
Yeah,
don't know what will come.
yeah.
Um, and is this still something that leaders after COVID-19, is it something that has been adopted now as a new leadership skill? Or do you
I
think
think
we just went back to where we were?
I think for a while it was really valued, and I think we are moving back toward that place of predictability and knowing what the position is. I
Mm,
also think it felt like a relief, right? Where we're all figuring this out. It's not going the way we planned, and it's okay, right? Um, and there were a lot of organizations that shut down as a
mm,
result. And that knowing that this is now part of the tapestry of what can happen makes us want to be prepared for something similar going forward, where it could be something completely unexpected, but we're prepared for something completely unexpected, and we have an ability to pivot no matter what that unexpected thing could be. Is
is
that correct?
this, yeah. And is this even reachable, or is it just a
Right.
utopic vision of leadership?
That's a great question. I think part of how, and this is what's different about what's being expected of leaders now, right?
Mm,
Is that we can pivot, we can handle whatever is unexpected because we are not leaning on our own technical ways of doing things. We're developing our skills of adaptability, of figuring things out together, of how do we work in a much more complex environment. We can't necessarily have the same hierarchical um, almost gatekeeping of decisions because they're slower, right?
mm,
We need to have a more agile, rapidly moving, responsive kind of leadership model without abandoning the structure that a hierarchy can bring. We're kind of doing both. And Cotter just put out a new book on change. Actually, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, but he talks about this kind of dual approach to
mhm.
leadership, which I think that that's where things are moving. So in the past, there's kind of an archetype of the leader as the steady knowing person. They set the vision, we listen to them, they move forward, right? And now it's much more about how you facilitate adaptability and responsiveness in the organization as a whole. And that kind of vision, I think.
And how do leaders deal with that change? Because one is pretty much in control,
Yeah,
and the other one is surrendering to the lack of control and gaining status from that.
yeah.
But it,
I think it is a I think that it can absolutely feel like that. And I think that control is looking different as we realize that in the level of complexity, rapid pace, and just the environment we live in, that's not that kind of old control is
mhm,
just an illusion.
mhm,
Like that's not actually holdable, right? I mean, it's the sand slipping through your fingers. You think you've got it, but then there's nothing there,
yeah,
right? And that this way of you are leading others through the figuring out, through
mhm,
the challenge, through the what are we holding still? What are our decision-making criteria that are applicable in any situation? We haven't exactly planned this scenario, and this scenario. We know how we will respond broadly based on the values that we have or based on our skill sets or based on what we're happening. Um, it's a different, it's guidance more than
mhm,
control,
mm,
right? Um,
facilitation, yeah.
yeah, you're, I do think leaders are becoming more facilitators
Mhm.
um, than the top down.
And do we observe that in reality? Because I can, what my hypothesis would be, my wild hypothesis,
Hmm.
I would be curious what you think about that, is that um, there are people who grew through the hierarchy to become the leaders
Hmm.
in old models.
Hmm.
Um, and so through the old kind of archetype of, okay, I'm in control, I'm knowledgeable, I'm maybe a technical expert.
Hmm.
Um, and now things are changing and they have to admit that they don't know. They have to be more facilitative. They have to learn all these skills that were maybe never required. So now a new generation of employees are coming in expecting that.
Hmm.
And then it's a struggle around power, maybe.
It can be, depending on how you hold that position,
Mm,
right? And I think that there are potential for cultural differences too, and what's
mm,
expected of leaders when we talk about multicultural intelligence and
mm,
how what we what we platform as this is the ideal leader, right?
mhm.
And so I'm based in the US, and so I think that there's a shift, but it's always a pendulum, right? You get
Yeah,
a little movement one way, and then it kind of goes back another way, and you get a little movement, and it goes back and forth. So
yeah.
there's always both. And to your point about power struggle, I think it matters quite a bit how it's framed,
Mm,
right? How the leader feels about that approach
mm,
themselves, and then how that's represented to the group,
yeah.
and what kind of I don't want to say freedom, but what the authorization is of
Mm,
everyone else, right? And what authorization remains with whoever that leader is and their approach. And all of that is organization specific, I think, based on where they are in their organizational life cycle.
mm,
Are they trying to retain market share, or are they in rapid growth, right?
mhm,
Are they trying um, to kind of keep what's already established and just maintain
mhm,
versus let's innovate and let's go somewhere else. Um, but I think that how the leader feels about that sense of power or that sense of what their role actually is makes a
mhm,
really, really big difference, right?
mm,
Which kind of connects over to this idea of cosplay that we were talking
mhm.
about just a minute ago. Can I connect us there, or
Yes,
did you want to go
please,
somewhere else?
please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have this theory um, around the idea that we are frequently cosplaying as leaders. Cosplaying meaning you're kind of putting on a costume and pretending to be someone else,
Mhm,
right? Um, and that we have this idea of what a leader's supposed to be.
mhm,
And that was we roll up into work, we're kind of putting it on, and we're trying to
mhm,
figure out what actions would we take, or what would the good leader say in this moment, or what would
mhm,
happen in this moment, right?
mhm,
And we're trying to be this projected character of
mhm,
ourselves, right? As opposed to coming in and being authentic
mhm,
with who we are and what we're bringing and what our position is. I think
mhm.
there's a couple of reasons. I can talk about this for a while, so feel free to
Yes,
interrupt me.
please. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I'm fascinated.
Okay. I think there's a couple of reasons that people cosplay,
Mhm,
and some are positive for certain, right? So there's like a in the moment or for a moment kind of cosplay where it's just strategic. It's helping us to step into a role. Think Beyoncé and
mhm,
Sasha Fierce, right? She takes on this kind of persona while she's
mhm,
performing, and then she sets it down when she's done. This helps her access what she needs to be able to
mhm.
do that work.
Yeah.
Love it. I think there's this other version where we feel like it's ongoing and it's never ending and it exhausts us
Mhm.
because this is the only acceptable version of us,
Because we're
right?
hiding parts instead of enhancing parts.
Yes, yes. We're trying to fit into something,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a dominant culture
Mhm,
where that could be race-based. It could be, sure, I love golf,
mhm.
right? Or
Yeah.
it could be there's just something about us where we're trying to fit into this dominant space in some
Yeah.
way. It can also be because we haven't yet developed our own point of view of what leadership means in this space, or how I am as a leader, or what's
Mm,
important as a leader. We're taking what we've learned maybe by reading biographies or maybe going to leadership classes, and we're like, this is what we're supposed to do, so
mhm.
this is what I'm about to do,
Or what
right?
we learned from the leaders we had, or the previous
Yes,
manager, or the
yes,
CEO.
yes,
Mm.
yes.
That's where then the
In
culture comes in.
coaching, yes. Some of the leaders that I've coached, we can get into that level of discussion where it's like, why is that the approach that you feel like you need to take? sometimes when we say, why is that, right, it becomes like a defensive question. And it's not a defensive question, but it's like, tell me about what makes you think that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're tracing it back to, well, that's the way my grandfather was, or that's the way my father was. We take an early leadership, we almost archetype them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I was
As
about
if
to
this is
say.
the way that it's supposed to be.
Mm,
And so some of the work that I'm doing is on sorting through kind of the questions and the work to determine your own point of view about what's important to you as you're
mhm,
leading a group, and what are you trying to provide. So working on, I have a workbook about free yourself from leadership cosplay. I have a deck, which is like a question of the day kind of thing, that helps you just kind of, get your mind in where you want to come into the
mm,
space that you're entering. And I think that that is um, especially for people that are in a new role. It doesn't
mhm,
necessarily have to be they're a new leader, but it's in a new role. Because there's a big change from middle management to senior management to executive leadership, right?
mhm,
And how that shows up. Um, Being very clear on how you are entering that space,
mhm,
and how you being intentional about how you enter that space and making decisions as
mhm.
opposed to being reactive, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's fascinating. And I would love to dig deep. You gave a few examples of where the archetypes come from,
Mhm.
and the different sorts of cosplay. And I wonder when it becomes too late.
Mm.
Right? So maybe we can start with, okay, so how do we actually do the choices? And then as we enter, I think there is this moment, how much freedom, how much autonomy do we have as a leader to
Yeah.
actually choose for our own authentic self?
Hmm.
And then I can imagine that a little bit of costume as we start is feels safe
Hmm.
until it becomes our new face and then we burn out.
Yeah.
Maybe
The fake it till you make it idea,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Or yeah, maybe fake it until you make it and then you realize that now I'm making something that I never wanted to make. So it's
Exactly.
only fake
Exactly.
left.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so maybe we can start at the beginning and then work our way towards
Okay. Okay.
what
Tell me
it's
about
like.
too late when it's too late. What are you thinking of there?
Mm, I'm thinking of golf. Oh, of course I love golf.
Mm.
Oh, of course I love to wear the suit to work and to speak in a certain lingo and to belong to certain business
Hmm.
clubs.
Hmm.
Um, and I would hide that actually I come home and I listen to hip hop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and maybe I do rap music and I play basketball.
Right.
And then I hide all of that until I'm basically in this almost schizophrenic situation where I'm someone
Mm.
else at work
Hmm.
and giving up my
Yeah.
authenticity.
Yeah. And the cost and the toll that takes on
Exactly,
us
exactly.
individuals,
So
right?
this would be for me the too late because then it's taxing to play a role and to
Yeah.
pretend and
Yeah.
or someone who doesn't admit at work that they're queer.
Hmm. Hmm.
For me, this would also, so when are you coming out?
Right. Right.
So for me, that's
Right.
also kind of cosplay.
I think it can be, absolutely. And I think to be very clear, a lot of times when there's that hiding idea, it's because that's the only way I keep my job,
Hmm.
right? Or that's who I need to be in this scenario. This other aspect of myself doesn't feel like it's going to be welcomed.
Hmm.
And I think that there are, every person's scenario is different on what is actually the right choice for you in your scenario and what you're doing, right? So I don't ever want to sit here and say, no, you must be what others would determine is your authentic self in every
Mm.
scenario. Right? That's your decision.
Hmm.
You're making the decision based on what feels right to you.
Yeah.
And it's when we get into that moment of burnout of this is exhausting. This drives me not bonkers, right?
Hmm.
This tires me out and it's not worth it.
Yeah.
That I think we start examining the okay, how do I show up in a way that feels I think the word authentic is almost overused, right? But in a way that feels authentic to
Hmm.
me and that doesn't make me feel exhausted at
Yeah.
the end. And
And
sometimes it means that there are difficult conversations of, you know what, Bob, I actually don't love golf. Here's the thing I do love. Do you want to do that instead? Right? or or um, just looking for those opportunities to kind of insert more of yourself.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think it's very important to acknowledge that we are often different people in different scenarios, and that's not a bad thing,
Yeah,
right?
and maybe we can double click on the word authentic
Yes, yes,
because
okay.
I recently had a conversation with a group of executives in a workshop where we spoke about psychological safety,
Mm-hmm.
and then authenticity came up, um, and how vulnerable it is to be authentic.
Yeah.
Because authenticity is not. I read this article that leaders should be strategically authentic,
Oh,
and I almost jumped into the screen to shake the author because I got so angry. I'm like, strategic authenticity, what the heck?
uh-huh.
Because then for me, authenticity is when it's not to be the the worst part of our character when we don't know how to behave,
Mm.
not to jump
Mm-hmm.
through the screen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the admitting that we're human.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the self-aware, the
yeah, yeah. I think for me, it's very important to distinguish transparency from authenticity.
mm,
So transparency meaning you can see all the way through me and there's nothing that I'm keeping for myself or that I keep for my relationship or for whatever, right? Authentic being I'm not pretending to do what will make you happy,
mm, yes,
right?
people pleasing is
Yeah. Yeah.
inauthentic. Yeah.
Which for some people, depending on where they are in their kind of form of mind, people pleasing is being authentic. This is how I know to navigate the world.
Yeah, and then it's what are the masks we are actually wearing to protect
Right.
our wounds?
Right.
So because many are inauthentic because they're traumatized and then they don't even know that
Right.
they're inauthentic.
Right. I
Um,
mean, that's very authentic to them. Like, this
yeah.
is the way I've learned to be safe, quote
Hmm.
unquote, in the world is to know who I'm talking to and to be who that person needs me to be.
Yeah.
That is authentic for me, right? That is how I know how to navigate the world. And
Yeah.
there's potential, right, for them to, do therapy and to discover creative things and whatever. But that's not fair for us to expect of others, right?
Yes, and it's not on us to judge, oh, you're being inauthentic,
Exactly.
because
Exactly.
if putting down the mask would mean not feeling safe in the world.
Right, right. So I
Mm.
like to think of authenticity as it didn't wear me out at the end because I was pulling something back that just felt painful to pull back.
Yeah, or it was the least costly, because I think
Yeah,
people pleasing is
it can be the least
also
costly option.
exhausting, but maybe less than being anxious.
Right, right.
Mm.
And so it's I mean, I don't
Mm.
want to get on the bad list here, but in some ways that can be a strategic
Hmm.
sense, right? Of
Mm.
how we show up into that space. Or
Mm.
it could be that in
Yeah,
a space where you are very comfortable,
yeah,
you almost have a place of privilege where you know what to expect and what's going on, and you can show up in a different way. Your
yeah.
personality might look very different in that space than in a space where you're something brand new and you don't know what to expect and what are the norms and what's happening here, and you show up in a very different way.
And this is, for me, this is both very authentic without
That's
being
authenticity.
strategically
Right.
authentic.
Right.
I think what bugs me
Right.
to just to um what bugs me with the strategic authenticity is it it suggested that um asking people to be authentic means inviting them to show the full transparency of their bad character. And
Oh,
then me not having myself under control and behaving like a 5-year-old, for me that's not authentic, that's immature.
that's strategic, authentic.
No,
That's go.
and then it would be strategically authentic to hide certain parts of your character, and for me that's maturity. That has
Oh,
nothing to do with
I agree with
authenticity,
you.
and that's
I
why I
agree.
got so angry.
Yes, yes. And I think that that can be a common misunderstanding where authenticity is I say whatever came to my head because that's the authentic me.
That's immature or
Right,
neurotic or
right.
whatever.
Emotionally dysregulated, right? Like
Yes.
that's not fair to
Yeah.
offer to everyone, and this is me. right?
Yeah.
Like we all have things that pop into our head that it does not make it the right thing to say or the path to continue on,
Yeah. And I
right?
don't even want my partner to be this
Right,
kind of authentic. I
right,
don't want to know everything that's going on in their mind.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think,
I'm glad that we're on the same page on
okay,
the
good.
point of authenticity. Um, and I do like your definition and description that yes, the mask that we wear to
Yeah,
protect ourselves is part of our authentic self.
yeah,
Maybe not of our highest spiritual enlightened self,
right,
but our
right.
authentic being.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, we all have growth ahead of us,
Mm.
right? And who knows what next year I'll uncover that I was doing that wasn't serving me, right?
Hmm.
And then I can kind of unpack, and this is actually more authentic to
Yeah.
what is me.
Yeah.
I think it's very unfair for us to judge other people's authenticity,
Mm. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things that sometimes we can get a hint, we can get like a suspicion, we can get a vibe that
I
like
feel
something
it.
seems off here,
Yeah.
right? It just feels, it feels a little political or a little calculated or a little, that's not what you said to me an hour ago or
Hmm.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that this is primarily an inward personal journey
Hmm.
more than something that we determine. Like we could never rate on someone's, performance review how authentic they were,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
And somehow I have the impression that we sense that. So if someone says
Yeah,
yes and means no, we kind of sense this dissonance. Um,
yeah, we can.
so I do think that many humans have a very good bullshit detector in terms of authenticity. Maybe sometimes even better than the person themselves. Someone who's people pleasing might not be aware that they're actually doing that
Sure,
because
sure.
it's just how they operate. Um,
Yeah,
and I do agree. Who are we to judge that?
yeah. It's
So
both and,
yeah,
right? So
we
I agree. Like
might
people
sense
have,
the
yeah,
inauthenticity, but we cannot judge because
yes.
who are
So
we to
so
do that?
notice your sensor that's going off, something's off here, and hold that with curiosity as
Mhm.
opposed to certainty,
Yeah.
right?
And therefore, I think the charismatic leaders, they are people who just win with their authenticity because they own it. I think there's something that many people feel attracted to, so we sense it
Hmm.
if someone has done the work.
Can I disagree with you a little bit?
Yes, please. I
I
love
think
it
that,
when guests disagree with me.
okay.
Thank you.
I think that a lot of who we assign the label charismatic to
Hmm.
are people who are very good external representers,
People
but they're
pleasing.
not necessarily integrated internally. I don't know that that's a given association, right?
Mm,
It feels like they are to us, but then you'll read these exposés 10 years later of what they were really like at home, or what's really happening to actually work for their organization or whatnot. I think it's a skill that we can develop to appear authentic and to
mm.
appear charismatic.
Oh,
Um, but it's not necessarily a straight causation.
mm.
I mean, it's not necessarily always true, I
Yeah.
guess.
And then it's a very different strategic authenticity that's
Ooh,
borderline
yes,
dangerous.
yes,
Or without
yes,
borderline, just dangerous. Yeah.
yes.
Mm,
And I think sometimes the most charismatic people, they can be wonderful humans, right? Sometimes it is fully integrated and this is who they are, but it doesn't mean that they're the one that's the best skilled to lead this space or this issue or this scenario.
mm. So is the charismatic leader one of the archetypes?
Oh, interesting. It could be. I haven't actually looked at all the different types of leader in that way. But I think that you're onto something with that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about that, right? Like this is someone who is a charismatic leader.
Yeah.
This is someone who is a visionary leader. This is someone who is a innovative leader or whatnot. Yeah, I think you're right.
Because I wonder, and you touched on that, speaking about, oh yeah, my grandfather was this kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
So the choice of the costume for the leadership cosplay,
Mm-hmm.
um, where do you think does it come from? And is it conscious or unconscious? Mostly.
I think that I think it's all of them. I think that for a lot of people, it's unconscious. Other people are, they're reading biographies. This person did a great job. Everyone talks about that person as a leader. Let's see what they did and what can I implement, right? And it's
Mm,
almost an intentional learning choice. Um, and I think for, I'm gonna slightly divert for a second. Is that okay?
yeah.
I really appreciate Jerome Keegan and Jennifer Garvey Berger, the way they talk about adult development and different forms of mind.
Hmm.
Um, they're talking about different ways people approach just how their minds work, how they're thinking about things. And they're not necessarily talking about that when we think of like child development, it's like you're supposed to go to stage to stage to stage, right?
Hmm.
These are much more, your form of mind needs to match whatever scenario you're in, your complexity,
Hmm.
right? So it's not like something where we should aspire to be in these different places. It's just a description of what different people have. And there's three that I'm going to bring into this conversation that they're talking about. One is the socialized mind, where we are making decisions based on fitting into the group, into
Hmm.
belonging, into being safe in that way, right?
Hmm.
What's right for the organizational values or for my family or for whatnot. This is how we just think about things with staying within. And there's a self-authored form of mind, which is this is my personal core values and I operate within those. And sometimes they can become uncomfortable, right? Because I'm not fitting into that organization as well, or I'm not fitting into that
Hmm.
family group as well, or whatnot. And then there's a self-transformed, which is talking about kind of like being able to synthesize multiple perspectives, dimensions, point of view all the time. You're always seeing all the options.
Hmm.
I think, now I'm losing myself a minute here, but I think that often, if we're in a socialized place, that archetype that we're taking in is unconscious. It's more
Mm.
frequently just something that we've absorbed as this is what's right in this space.
To satisfy the need for belonging.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. And this is how it's always been in my experience, and this is what's right and normal,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
I think that we're in more of that self-authored frame of mind. We might be more intentionally seeking out what did others do and how do I apply that for me?
Hmm.
Right? Which is not to say that socialized wouldn't read biographies and take things in, right? Somebody who's celebrated in their space, of course, we're going to try to do things that they did. That's really successful here, right? Not a conscious thought, but that's just how we
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And in the self-authored, it's what am I pulling in, or what are my influences, and what decision am I making as a result of that? There's a
Mm.
lot of kind of I'm making it sound very intentional, and I don't know that it always is so much as it just feels integrated or it feels off
Mm.
in some way,
Hmm.
right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of what we do in leadership development, especially as we're getting into senior level leadership or executive leadership, is moving people even deeper into that self-authored
Hmm.
space. So it's less about the belonging and less about the cultural norms, cultural meaning the organization or your family or your microcultures, right? And more about what is your point of view and how are
Mm.
you leading this organization,
Hmm.
right? What are you contributing personally?
To
I
have,
feel like that's bringing things into your head.
yeah. What comes to my mind is then the integrity
Yeah.
and then the leading with integrity where it's also a clearer leadership in the sense that to give directions. If we're aligned with, if our actions are aligned with our values, that's how I understand integrity.
The in people in any form of mind can have very high integrity, right? It's what
Mm.
we're basing what that integrity is on.
Mm.
So in a socialized form of mind, your integrity is within what is right in this group. The group decides what is right and what is not.
Mm.
And
Okay.
are we in integrity with that,
Hmm.
right? Versus in self-authored, you're starting to move more into, I understand that
Mm.
this is the group that I'm living in, but for me, it just feels off in some way. What is my integrity?
So the organizational context for both
Hmm.
kinds of mindsets or leaders
Hmm.
are very different. So I would think that they're maybe more hierarchical organizations, more maybe family traditions, more conservative
Hmm.
organizations
Hmm.
might expect these leaders, expect their leaders to integrate the styles that is lived around them and to
Hmm.
belong.
Hmm.
whereas maybe more progressive, don't want to call them modern, um, organizations would expect their leaders to find their own.
It can be. And I want to be clear, like we're talking about this from a psychologist perspective, anthropologically almost. We're
Hmm.
describing what's happening more than anyone being like, I think I'm in this form of mind, and so this is how I make my decisions, right? Or
Yeah,
this is what we expect,
yeah.
right? Um, so so in that socialized, I mean, they're very successful, very senior, very executive leaders can be in that socialized place, absolutely. And you're going to hear things like, "This is who we are. This
Hmm.
is the way we've done it, right?
Hmm.
This is what's right for us. This is how we're a part of this." And it can be in that social self-authored frame of mind too, right? Very successful, very known, you know, as top of the leaders as you go, or all the way throughout. And it can start to sound like, I know this is what's happened, but or the context that we're in, but I feel like for me, it's just really important this,
Hmm.
right? And then they start to kind of spread that throughout the organization. A really firm belief in that this approach is the right approach, and other people, please come join me in that, right?
Hmm.
Um, there was one thing that you said that I wanted to come back to, and I'm losing it. Um, where were you ending with the
The hierarchical organizations
hierarchical organizations? I've lost it. If
and
it
how
comes
they
back.
accommodate leaders or how leaders have
Oh, and
to.
kind of what they expect
Hmm.
from a leader, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that this, yes. So sometimes we might think that a certain form of mind is what we're asking for in our leaders, but usually that only happens because that's where we are, and so we think that's where everyone should be.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we're not ever thinking about these different forms of mind and like what it happens. That only happens when you go into doctorate, grad school and you get nerding out on all this stuff,
Hmm.
right? Which is
Yeah.
the way we live our lives. We usually think whatever my approach is the right approach, and we can assign a moral value to it. This is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is
Hmm.
bad, right?
Hmm.
Um, the interesting thing for me is I love frameworks, I love typologies because it expands the options. We don't
Hmm.
know what the options are beyond what we do,
Hmm.
right? We kind of are like, this is the way it works, and other people are either weird, or else I'm missing something they have, right? But now there's all these ways to be that make sense, and there's no moral value to it. There's no good or bad. It's
Hmm.
just, oh, there's different places people can be coming from. Whether we're talking about like a strengths orientation, right, or which
Yeah.
strengths people are leading with, or a form of mind, or I don't know, some people like MBTI or something like that, right? Just
Yeah.
some kind of way to a framework, a scaffold that we build our understanding of the world on.
Yeah, and make sense of the people around us with a little bit less judgment. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Which I think is really valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what the where diversity comes in and why it's so valuable
Mhm.
because we do need different
Right.
perspectives.
Which
Um,
I think is so valuable, especially going back to the change that we were talking about and
mhm.
how complex it is. And we're working on global levels. And we're not only working with organizational cultures, we're working with deeply ingrained national cultures and ethnicities, right? And things that we don't even know are possible to be different somewhere
Mhm.
else, right? Just basic assumptions about how life works. And the more that we're expanding our view of what can be different, right,
Mhm.
the more able we are to navigate that multicultural interaction, to have intelligence, multicultural intelligence, right?
Yeah. And then hmm, I would assume that the more pressure is coming from the outside, so
Mm,
more change, higher pace, um, more at stake. So leaders have to take bigger decisions, air quotes. So
yeah,
with less information,
yeah.
um, or maybe sometimes even too much information that actually doesn't mean anything. Um,
No, I think it does.
and then I would think that it's then even more difficult to deal with than the diversity, to have this cognitive diversity or the the
Mm,
ability to see opportunity in all these possibilities and different minds.
hmm.
So, what does it take a leader to grow into that?
I come back to facilitation. I think
Mm,
this is what we do as facilitators. When we enter a room and different people are interacting in different ways, and we're coming at it with a curiosity of what are they bringing and needing, what
hmm,
is their perspective, what's important to them,
hmm.
what's important to the group as a whole, right?
Yeah.
I think these are things that are going through our heads when we're in a workshop or when we're in a strategic planning retreat or we're doing something facilitating the space, and every person coming in is contributing something or needs something or what's happening there. And
Mm.
I think it's becoming more facilitative in our leadership as well.
And then it's the surrendering to the fact that the leader nowadays doesn't have to know everything. So
Well,
the
yeah,
higher the pace, the bigger the stakes, the more surrendering, and then facilitating the
yeah,
group, the team
yeah.
to come
I
in.
think organizations go through different stages where they need different things in leaders, right?
Hmm.
So if you're a small organization, maybe you're just a small group of people, um, and there can be a single leader who then delegates tasks to people,
Hmm.
right? But they're kind of holding the space of it all.
Hmm.
And then you get a little bit bigger and you're like, I need a leadership team. And you are going to be fully responsible for this business line or this department or this responsibility, whatever it is. And y'all are going to report to me as the leader. And then there comes a point where we are making decisions in silos that was really useful for when we were this size or this complexity, that siloization, because you needed to be fully responsible for that decision. That's how we moved fast. That's
Hmm.
how we were agile. That's how we did it. And then there comes a point where the organization gets more complex, and what we need is enterprise level leadership,
Mm.
where it's not about one person making the decision. It's about our senior leadership team as a group is thinking about what's the future of this business and how do our areas of expertise, our business lines, our departments, whatever they are, how are they affected? How are they contributing to this decision? What needs to be represented? But we're not making decisions from our own, just what benefits us in our business
Hmm.
line. We're making decisions for the entire group,
Yeah.
right? And I think that connects to this different type of leadership where we are moving into a more facilitative, what is the enterprise thought conversation? It's not about one person having the answer. It's about everyone bringing their expertise and thinking about the challenges as a whole,
Hmm.
right? And where are we going with that overall? So all of those are very valid ways of leading depending on
Hmm.
what your situation calls for, right?
Yeah. And what the question that came to my mind, or the curiosity, is whether this, you described it as an organization growing, and
Mm,
then they need more distribution, more interaction where the silos no longer make sense. Could it also be with the complexity of an organization?
yeah.
Because I can imagine that nowadays everything is more intertwined,
Mm,
interrelated, and
mhm.
then maybe even smaller organizations cannot afford, in air quotes, to have silos anymore and need to interact.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I agree with you that it's not necessarily size based what the complexity requires of you,
Hmm.
right? And I guess it depends on what your work is, right? And how
Mm.
complex your work is and where is it coming there. Um, it
Yeah.
goes back to this whole typologies and there's no moral goodness. There's no this is the way it should be. It's
Hmm.
what matches your situation, what matches your need.
Yeah.
Um, there are options to choose from there.
Yeah. What is the market? Yeah, I think a software company would be very different from a company that is producing parts of a car
Mm, mm.
in terms of how
And
much the silos have to be interconnected.
yeah, that's interesting to think about. I'd be very curious to talk to people from both of those organizations and talk about what they're seeing and where they fit. I find that a lot of times I'm like, this makes sense to me, right? And they're like, well, actually, here's what our reality is.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, the
we're
more you know, the more you realize how complex it
right,
actually is.
right, right.
Yeah.
With how much more automation is going into automobiles,
Hmm.
with the computer systems in them and with whatnot,
True.
like it's possible that that level of complexity is there for them as well. They're not necessarily just assembly lining steel parts anymore,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. True. And that most companies might turn into tech companies.
Yes, I feel like a tech is a component of
Yeah,
everything these days.
yeah.
Yes. And there's also, I mean, we are talking about all this further complexity and moving into it. There's also the option to move out of it, right? And to value the slowing and
Mm,
the localness and the I don't ever want to become that complex. I want to be relatively small and neighbor-ish and connected in those ways, right? I mean, these are all options. It's just
hmm.
about what do you need and where are you going?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And then it's self-leadership.
Say it again.
Self-leadership.
Right, right. Which comes into I mean, it brings us back to that intentionality. And
Hmm.
I know what my point of view is and where I'm going. I'm not just following where everyone else is going.
Yeah,
This is where I'm going. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Um, I'm I'm writing a book, and I think
Hmm,
we spoke about that in our
that's right.
exploration call, that I call provocatively unprofessionalism.
That's right.
Uh,
Yes.
and it is about the masks that people wear to fit in.
Hmm.
And I would be curious to hear from your experience. What is your understanding of professionalism as a label in leadership?
Hmm. Whew, this is such a big question, right? Especially everyone's local context matters. So I'm in the US and professionalism can have a racial undertone, right?
Mm,
Are you fitting into what is expected?
hmm.
Based on, are you becoming like the dominant culture, right?
Mm,
That's definitely something that can be represented with that. And it can also be you are putting the business, wherever you are working, as the primary being
hmm.
over your own personal, right? So I
Mm,
might talk to somebody differently, or I might interact with a client or somebody. If I ran into them in a coffee shop, we might have a very different interaction than if I am the barista,
hmm.
right? Because I'm
Yeah,
representing the organization in some way,
yeah.
and that's professionalism,
Hmm.
versus um, just the random conversation of we bumped into each other and you spilled my coffee, right? Like that, that doesn't happen
Yeah,
when I'm professional,
yeah,
right? Um, and it's hard to talk about it for me in the US without acknowledging that this can be assimilation tactic
yeah,
also, right? Are you fitting in the way that we want you to, kind
yeah,
of. Um, so my mind keeps ping-ponging back and forth between them because acknowledging that while also um, is it fair? I think it is very fair for an organization to have you are representing us, and this is the way the organization should be represented.
hmm.
Right? So it's kind of a both and tension in my
Yeah,
mind all the time.
yeah.
But I'm curious how you describe it.
Um, I love that, and it's actually exactly it boils down actually to that tension where the
Mm,
originally the concept of professionalism comes from having professionals who would value the well-being of their clients higher
mm,
than their own
okay.
well-being. Um, so back from the Middle Ages, the professionals. So that was a title.
Interesting.
Someone who worked hard, and then an association, a guild would give them the stamp. Okay, you're a professional.
Oh, nice.
And that was part of their status. Is like, oh yes, my clients come first,
Uh-huh.
and it has changed to something that is now the corporate professionalism,
Hmm.
where companies want, wanted their employees to represent them at scale,
Hmm.
so they
Hmm.
didn't have time to really get every individual through apprenticeship. So it had to go faster. So, okay, let's treat an organization, a corporation, like an assembly line. And
Hmm.
then professionalism indeed means fitting in,
Hmm.
following the rules.
Hmm.
And then nowadays, and that's where my curiosity for the book comes in, as what comes after that, because it doesn't seem to fit any longer, because it is the value of diversity, it is the dominant culture that is no longer
Hmm.
working, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, And then what is it that people are people still aspiring an outdated label? I think this would be
Yeah,
my
yeah.
curiosity.
Interesting. I
Um,
really love the history of that. I feel like that's something I love hearing the historical context of how things came to be. I feel like it's
mm,
so useful, and it's something I don't always search out.
mm,
But I think it's so useful when it's there. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, I kind of fell into that and started to dig on like what is it actually about? Um,
Right.
and then wonder what is it that people, and then we're back to the cosplay. What are people pretending to be in order to earn the label? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then the role of AI and the role of knowing and knowledge in leadership. Do you think that, what do you think is the impact of AI as a technology? Suddenly,
Yeah.
knowledge is available almost at no cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll be fascinating to see whatever I say right now, what happens a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, and how that perspective changes, right?
Mm.
Because one of the things AI brings us is the constant change.
Back,
One of the
yeah,
things
back to
I
the
noticed,
change you mentioned in the
yeah,
beginning. Yeah.
yeah. One of the things that I noticed with AI and that knowledge is freely available to anyone, right? There is no that level of expertise. It just feels like you just have to write the right prompt and you can
Mhm,
get it, right? But I think that AI frequently gives us um, skimming the top
mhm,
answers
mhm,
or answers that are um, focused in a certain area, let's say. And we don't know if it's skimming the top or focused in a certain area unless we have the expertise to recognize what could be missing from it,
mm, mhm,
right? Or how complete it is or what's happening there. So I think it produces an illusion of knowledge,
mhm,
and I think we lose a lot of the depth of expertise,
mm,
essentially. Um, I also get concerned about the studies that I see coming out where when we are asking AI to do something for us, our brains are so efficient that we very quickly start to kind of shut down that operating aspect of ourselves,
mm,
right? And now that ability, that functionality, that expertise lives over there. It doesn't live within us anymore, right?
mm.
We
Yeah.
lose the ability to think in that way or to do those things. So those things scare me.
Mhm,
Those things scare me with how we're bringing it in. I use it all the time, and I'm usually using it for things like how do I get this embedded in my website? What is the
mhm.
code or
Yeah.
something, right? Something that I don't mind that I'm not learning a deep expertise in personally. Other
Mhm,
people, absolutely, right? But this isn't something for me. Um, but I don't know. I do see it kind of shifting the idea of knowledge as an expertise, and it becomes more about how are you able to apply it and
mm,
implement it,
yeah.
than do you have it, right?
Mm,
But those things are so tightly intertwined for me
yeah.
that it's hard to extract it. I don't know what's going to happen. I
Yeah.
feel both nervous about it and kind of like every time a new technology is introduced, people get nervous, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
how do we keep moving? Um, yeah, it's an interesting thing, right?
Yeah.
Is it about, I don't know. I don't see a lot of the leaders that I work with now are not necessarily I have the answer leaders.
Mm,
They are very much I have an idea or I have an aspiration or I have a great group of people and where do we keep going?
mm,
But I don't see the people I'm interacting with are not in the position because of the knowledge that they have necessarily.
mm.
But your face is making me think that you interact with different types of leaders.
Um, Not necessarily. I work a lot with corporates. So
Uh-huh.
I hear about leaders. I don't work, so I'm not
Oh, okay.
coaching
Okay.
corporate
Yeah.
leaders
Yeah.
as you would.
Yeah.
Um, so and then I wonder I wonder whether the teams that are speaking about their leaders are they the same leaders that then on the other side of the table are the aspiring leaders, those who
Right.
ask questions and then
Right.
confronted with the team, we're all humans.
Right. Right.
and communication fails and breaks down, and
Yeah.
we don't even know.
Yeah. And they were just in the group meeting where they're all figuring out together. And then when they go talk to their team, it makes it sound like they knew, right? They knew the answer. Here's where it is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. The
yeah,
perception of that.
fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Super interesting.
And
What do you
I'm
think about
hmm?
AI? What do you think about AI and facilitation and leadership and all of it?
Mm, similar. I think what I'm what makes me nervous is that the moment we have infinite data, we
Mm-hmm.
can basically connect everything with everything, and we can find an answer, or we can justify anything.
Mm,
I'm thinking of my of research projects, right? Empirical research projects where my statistics professor said at some point, I don't trust any statistic that I haven't faked myself,
right.
right?
Right.
And then the data mining. Right?
Yeah.
You just crunch the data as long as you find
Right.
whatever supports your hypothesis. And the
Yeah.
more data you have, the higher the probability that you'll find something that will support your
Mm,
hypothesis.
mm,
Um, and then it's worthless,
mm-hmm.
basically. So
Going
this
back to
is
too
something
much
that,
information.
hmm?
Going back to that too much information comment you
Yeah,
made earlier. Yeah.
yeah. And then if we rely on that, then how can we manipulate it? Or are we taking the wrong path because of that? And
Yeah.
then where's the critical thinking that you also
Right.
mentioned? Um, so we ask one question, we take the best answer because our brain became too lazy to actually dig deeper, or if we don't know that we could.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I love, I started working with AI, asking the question, and what else?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. There's
Yeah.
so much more coming up.
There's always more. There's
Or
always more.
is that true? Are you sure?
Right, right.
Yeah.
My favorite question these days, in fact, I was just on typing before we started talking, was are you being overly supportive or are you adequately representing both the critiques and of what we're talking about? And it's hilarious. Like it'll start being like, oh, maybe I am being over supportive. And then you start to get in a cycle of wondering if it's just agreeing with you again. Right?
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. Because I think that's the other thing that working too much with AI, especially with the newer models, they're so supportive. And oh,
So supportive.
Miriam, this idea is brilliant. And
Always.
then oh, it's more, um, it's nicer to engage with AI because I get so
Right.
many compliments than with a
Right.
podcast guest who starts to disagree with me.
Right.
Where are we? um, and then I think to not to unlearn the joy of being in a debate and being intellectually challenged and being disagreed with. Um,
Yeah.
and when you spoke, I was wondering, well, you said, to what extent are we sure that we're just extracting the upper layer of the
Yeah.
knowledge and not going deeper? I wonder whether AI, if it's really efficient, it will assume that you're looking for the same information as the majority of the other users. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what you get. So
Mm.
unless you ask really precise questions, and for asking precise questions, you need to know a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you get the average.
Yeah.
Um,
And everything becomes the average.
mhm.
There's no like, so we both facilitate, right? And depending on what the client is looking for, they might prefer your facilitation or mine. But when we use the AI, everything just becomes the same,
Yeah.
right? It becomes the average of that.
And then again, we're at this, if we are not authentic, whatever that means,
Yeah.
um, but try to fit in, try to live up to a certain image, then there won't be any difference. Whereas what makes us stand out is
Right.
this quirkiness, the edges, the
Right.
imperfection.
The things that you uniquely see based on your perspective and your position, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
all that you bring. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And then
Yeah.
it's less important to have the million other perspectives. Yes, they
Right.
exist, it's great. And sometimes it's awesome to just have one lens.
Yeah.
Um, huh.
Hmm. That's a good point.
What remains your facilitation challenge?
Whew. What remains my facilitation challenge? I mean, my mind goes a couple of places. It could be what's difficult for me, or it could be what's the next thing that I'm trying to learn, or it could
Mm.
be,
If these are not the same thing?
yeah, not necessarily.
Mm.
So one of the things I'm trying to learn more about is um, neurodiversity facilitation,
Mm.
multicultural intelligence, just bringing that more in. But it's not necessarily difficult for me in the sense that I don't know what I don't know.
Mm.
Right.
Hmm.
It's not a challenge. I'm like, oh, I did it wrong, right? Or I wish I would have done it differently.
And
Um,
before we get into the other one, because that's also interesting, what is it that you think you believe you would do differently or better if you
yeah,
had more knowledge or skill on neurodivergent facilitation,
yeah.
on multicultural facilitation?
I think that there are assumptions that I bring that are not necessarily universally shared,
Mm.
right? About what is the best way to dig into to content,
Hmm.
or how we are interacting with authority in a certain
Mm.
space, or even the idea that everyone should have a voice in the conversation. That is culturally located,
Hmm.
and it's culturally very uncomfortable for
Hmm.
some other folks, right? That's never our aspiration. That is not us doing good work together,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
So even just that kind of awareness of what space am I entering into, and what is the ideal in this world? What is the conversation they wish they could be having, right?
Mm.
It's not just my assumption about what I wish I could be having in that space. It's what is this group and what is their um, what's different about those things. I think there are so many things, especially when we start talking about like national culture.
Hmm.
Um, it's the fish swimming in the water where we have no idea that this is even a thing,
Hmm.
right? This is just basic humanity, but not necessarily.
Mm. Yeah, and then if we challenge it, are we challenging it just out of our ignorance
Right,
because of our cultural lens?
right.
For instance, yeah, I love your examples. Everyone should have a say, an
Yeah,
equal share. There are cultures where this is simply not true.
right,
And who
right.
are we to challenge that?
Exactly.
Uh,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So that's one I'm
Mm.
aware
Mhm.
of, but I don't know all the ones I'm not aware of,
Yeah.
right? So I want
Yeah.
to learn more about that, and what could come up. And similarly with different types of neurodivergence, right? What are the things that make you feel comfortable in that space? They will differ based on how you process, how your mind works, right? So even just the idea of first I want you to reflect on paper, then we'll do in pairs, then we'll do a group, right? That's a great process for a lot of people. And for some people, it's anxiety producing. And there's a
Mhm.
different process that I could offer options or be more flexible with depending on what tends to be right in different ways of processing.
Mhm. And then there's another bucket, which is trauma-informed facilitation, which
What's
is
that?
um, that there's how to deal with potential either groups or individuals who have been traumatized.
Oh, trauma informed. I thought you were
Yeah,
saying traumain. And I was like, oh, there's a
no,
new one I haven't
trauma
heard of yet.
informed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. How do we bring those aspects in? And how many work meetings, we might call it a trauma with a small t, but they can be traumatic, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
how is this? Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. But then if I think about what is the thing that I walk away from meetings being like, ooh, did I do it this time? Uh, it is the holding the tension between who I've contracted with and their goals and the group as a whole, right? I know, like, whenever we talk facilitation, we're like, the entire room is our client, the entire room is our client. And I just find over and over in reality, yes, and who I contracted with is they're almost equal clients, right?
And I love that example so much because it was just last week I interviewed David. And for David, it was very clear there's one client, he
Mm,
contracted with this client, and the session is there to get to the goal of his client.
hmm.
Full stop.
Hmm.
And I was fascinated because I thought the facilitator is there in service to the group.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then to again see that, yeah, there are different facilitators with different approaches,
Yeah. Yeah.
different understandings. And then, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's the, how do I know this is always a tension. And
Mhm.
so how am I preparing for it in my contracting, in how I'm interacting, in getting permission for this to be the approach, right?
Mhm.
That contracting leader is on board with that idea, or what their role is going to be or how that works. But it's one of those things that for me is always a tension. And I never feel like I was right down the line this time I did it. It's always a thing.
Yeah, because our stories come in. Cognitive dissonance. I
Yes.
want to be the facilitator who is there for the entire group,
Yes.
and I want my invoice to be paid.
Yes. I love that part.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, or I really want to be there for the group, and I want to keep that client.
Right. Right.
So they are very down to earth challenges, trade-offs to make.
Yeah.
Um,
And how do we decide what is actually serving the group?
yes, who are we? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if we are there for the group, helping them voice something, we don't have to go back on Monday morning and
And we don't
face
have all
them.
the context and all of the what's happening. Like we're not experts in the system. We're just experts in the process.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And so whose voice are we? There's always more context. There's
Mm.
always more information. Whose voice are we leaning into in that moment? Um, and I don't know if this person just got into an argument with that leader, right? And that this isn't actually what desperately needs to be talked about. It's a personal issue or not, right? I have to trust the group and the person I've contracted with to a degree. That's a core part for me, as we make those decisions. And they're not always equal. I feel like there's a little bit aspect of, it might be a naive desire of mine to feel like I've got that exactly right. It might be one of those things that is context and situationally dependent, right?
Yeah.
And what's right for this group.
We before being live, we spoke about the episode that I recorded with the hot air balloon pilot,
Yes, so good.
Josie. And I found it fascinating that to hear from her in a very different context that the silent person knows how to take care of themselves. Whereas very
Mhm,
often facilitators in a workshop space assume that the person who's silent is the most vulnerable. We need to help
mhm.
them have a voice, take care of them. Where the loudest, or they take care of themselves. But in the context of a hot air balloon
Yeah,
in 2000 feet, the loudest is very often the person who's the most scared. And then
yeah,
suddenly, who tells us that we're right with our judgment whom to support and give a voice?
right, right. And how
Yeah.
much does the context matter for that? So is
Mm,
the silent person knows how to take care of their fear in that scenario?
yes.
Right? But then they actually do need more help raising their voice in this group meeting, right?
Yes.
And
Mm,
what is, or how much fear is involved in this meeting? Is this them taking care of themselves or is this feeling shut down? These are things that we can try to kind of get a sense of as the interaction goes on, but we're never 100% certain, right? I mean, there's the group is the expert in their dynamic in some way, and it becomes more of an invitation for us. I noticed this. What does that mean to y'all,
yeah.
right? And what do we want to do about it?
Yeah. And it just reminds me how important it is to leave the ego outside because it can feel
Yes.
so good to, I know exactly what you all
Oh,
need. Let me take care
no.
of you.
No. And I feel like the minute we say, I know exactly what you all need, we just lost everybody.
Yeah, 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 of
Right?
course. Yeah,
Everybody. Yeah. For me, that's one of the most important skills that I continue to develop is that this is not about me at all. Like
yeah,
there's nothing here where that's what being professional in that
yeah,
context is that there's no, I take nothing personally and
yeah,
there's no ego involved here. And I could be completely wrong. And somebody correcting me is serving the group. And that's what I'm here for. So I celebrate that.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Fun conversation.
Yeah. One more question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Hmm. What advice would I give my younger self? It's so hard to know. I love that question and I love asking people that question. And it's hard for me because I value each of the growth steps, right? Like I don't want to skip any of them along the way. Um, but it would probably be something about that. It's not personal.
Mm,
Nothing here is personal, right? Um, the the work that I'm here to help bring is in service to the group, and it doesn't need to be coming from me, right? The benefit or the value. It's more about creating that space for that work to happen. Um, and I would love if I knew earlier all of the different ways of being, right? And all of the possibilities of like this idea that this is the right way to do something.
mm,
I think that that can kind of take me a while to set down, right? And I'd loved if I knew that earlier, that there are so many rights and it needs to match your situation, your context, and your without going into the full postmodern, right? Like there is no right, right?
yeah,
I'm not necessarily going there so much, but there are so many rights.
yeah.
It's not a binary.
Especially when it comes to personal choice.
Yes,
So it's
yes,
not the world to be right or that they multiple truths.
yeah,
No, very often
yeah,
they're not. But
right.
for us, um, yeah.
And sometimes they are, but it's very clear. So there are multiple cultures that have different views on what is morally acceptable or
Mhm.
preferred,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And they can be completely opposite.
Yes.
And so while we might say that there is not a static universal, there is still a very culturally specific right or wrong,
Yes.
right? Or a
Yeah.
way forward.
Yeah.
I think that I would love if I thought about that earlier.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so, so much, sir.
Oh, my pleasure. This was fun.
I loved the conversation. I leave with lots of food for thought.
Me too.
And I would like to thank you for holding all these threads in your mind and picking them up as we spoke when I got lost in all my shiny objects. I want to
You
know
did
about
not get
this and I
lost to
want
me
to
at
know
all.
about that. Oh, let's come back to this thread.
That's the way our minds work. That's the way. Yes.
Highly
Yeah,
appreciate
that's
it.
fun.
Thank you so much.
My
And
pleasure.
if the audience want to find you, I put your contacts and website in the show notes.
Yep. Yeah. I'm really present on LinkedIn as well. That's a great place.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.